Greetings, everyone. It is Monday, September 26th on the East Coast of the States and evening for us. And we welcome you from wherever you're zooming in from. Greetings and welcome to the next virtual Dalcroze meetup. My name is Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host. I'm here with my dear friends and colleagues, Veronica Bileski and Emma Shubin, and we are just very pleased to have everybody together. We've already got a nice little crowd. We have a good little agenda to get going with this evening. And I think before we get into any of that, we should do our regular meet and greet. So what I'm going to do is make, man, we're quickly coming up to maybe 3 rooms. Now let's do 2 rooms. We'll do 2 quick breakout rooms. And when you get to the room, you only get about 2 minutes, maybe 3, and then I'll call everybody back. When you get to the room, if you would, please introduce yourself. Let everybody know where you're living and who do you teach. And if you're not actively teaching someone now, maybe who did you used to teach or who might you teach, but or who do you hang out with? But what's your name, where are you from, or where do you live, and who do you teach? And I'll call you back in just a couple of minutes. Ready, set, do I get this right? And go. Right, I think we've got everyone back. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. There you go. Hope you had a chance to say hi and maybe meet somebody new that you've not had a chance to speak with before. Since Veronica is going to do some presenting tonight, I think I'm going to go ahead and run with some announcements. So at the top of our announcement list for the coming season, next up is the Ruth Alperson Masterclass. That's going to be on, depending on where you're at, in the Americas or Europe or Africa, that's on Saturday, October 15th. And if you are in Asia or Australia, it'll be on Sunday, the 16th. If you haven't had a chance to work with Ruth Alperson, she lives in New York City. She's a diplôme. She's amazing. She has had just an outstanding career, and she's one of the nicest people ever. We're really pleased and excited that Ruth has made some time to share and work with us. So we strongly encourage everybody to register for Ruth's class. I don't have a title for her class, but Ruth has spent a lot of time with the kids. I mean, she does adult training as well, but I bet that at least some of what she's going to talk about will be sort of her interactions with the elementary age students. And so again, we encourage everybody to spend some time with her. Secondly, we have a short course that just started yesterday with Dawn Pratzen. And this is the 3rd time Dawn has run a version of her Dance with Dawn. It's a 6-week short course where you can attend live and you also can just watch the recordings or some mixture of both. So if you haven't registered yet but want to get in, you could still make up the time just by watching the recordings. And then with any luck could attend some of Dawn's in-person teaching. Dawn's amazing. You don't have to be a dancer to sign up for that class, but it is a great way to get sort of thoughtful, expressive movement back into your practice. And everything that she's doing there is going to be tailored for the people in the room. But I feel sure that most everything that you would work on with her, you would be able to find ways to apply it to whatever group of students that you're working with. And so just to be in some sort of big bodied, expressive movement routine is something that benefits all of us in season. And so having a chance to work with Dawn would definitely be worth your time. So you can still register if you just go to the website, virtualdalcroze.org. You'll find the links there for Dawn. We have a new registration platform. If you haven't registered for anything in the last, couple months, you'll see it's new and improved. Our friends at Integral Steps have worked really hard to clean that all up and make it even sharper and cleaner and faster. And so everybody should go check it out and then register for stuff. I think, Veronica, do I have this right, that we're going to listen to a reflection?
No, I forgot to take that out from last
time. Okay, that was last time.
Let me get rid of that. But it's a
Very
great
good.
video. I'm just gonna keep this in there if you want to. It's like one of the sweetest videos we've gotten from a scholarship student. Um, this woman is in Vietnam and she just made a video being like, "Here's what I learned. Let me show you how I'm doing it with my student on Zoom calls." And they're really awesome. Like you're
They
just
are.
like, "Look at
Um,
you!" Like that's amazing. Way to take all this learning and apply it.
at our last meetup, we watched about the first 3 minutes of it. I think it's a 7 or maybe 10 minute little video, which you can go to our YouTube channel and it's right there. Or you can go back to the last meetup recording and you can sort of see some of it there as well. So welcome everyone. We've got two amazing presenters tonight. The Veronica and I are both chipping in to present. We we're partly presenting because we have some, I think, interesting things to share what we've been up to, which is really sort of the nature of the meetup. Is we're looking for people to sort of share. One way of wording it is, please share your research, or which is to be translated as, what have you been up to? What are the sorts of things you're doing? What are you investigating? When I talk with my students about it, we say, what are you getting geeky about? What are you excited to sort of dig into a little bit more? And so as Veronica and I and Emma, as we were talking about what we might program for this particular meetup, we just started talking and realized, oh, actually, we have some interesting things we think that maybe the group would enjoy talking about. So I'm going to hand it over to Veronica, who's got some thoughts about first year skills after a year.
Okay, thank you. Um, this past 2 or 3 weeks, I've had a chance to see my students who have had a year of training with me last year in the same classes as the students who are just starting fresh. And so it's been a really interesting comparison. Um, and I wanted to share what I've observed. So in my younger classes, when there's like 3 and 4 and 5 year olds, some of those 4 year olds were with me last year as 3 year olds, and they are they get that we're gonna be listening to music and moving, and also like expected to use our imaginations and have fun, but also like stop when the music stops or change when the music changes, right? And so I think there's a coordination that they're just like comfortable with. Like there's going to be lots of cool imaginative stories that my teacher is going to plant in my mind. And then I get to move like this animal, and I'm so excited to go do that. But I think they're also aware, like, and I'm going to be asked to do a task. And I think some of the newer kids, they're just like, what is this? Oh, like a playground with music, and we get to be animals, but they're not quite in the flow of like, and we have some work that we're trying to get done. And like, uh, and so I just find that interesting that they get maybe carried away by like being a tiger and having like a tiger fight with their tiger friend, and then the music stops and they're still like, oh, we're being tigers, you know. So I think like there's this sense of um, they still have to, the younger kids have to learn like, how do I take in all the stimulus around me and respond to it, and I'm like not upset with them, right? Like it's their second class, of course, right? But I think it's just interesting to see the coordination of like knowing how to play these games. um, I'm also surprised that these 4 and 5 year olds, the 4 year olds especially, surprised me that they remember very specific things from last year. And it was the games that they got to have a lot of choice in. So they kept asking me, could we make a game where like the tiger is chasing some other animal, and there was chasing music, and like when it turned into a musical game of tag, like they kept asking for it for months, but they remembered it after a 3 month break, which is it's just fun to see. Um, in my flute students, I have seen in their private lessons that I will just have to say one thing, like bring the flute to your head, right? Because so often they'll like bring the flute and displace their head. And so the thing that I kept telling them all last year is bring the flute to you. The flute doesn't, replace your head. And what is really cool is that even if they come in after a summer and they're being a little sloppy with their posture, one sentence from me can like elicit a whole change in their body because they've put in that training, um, for many months, like actually practicing that. Whereas the newer students, I can say the exact same sentence and they'll not really like immediately find their place. Instead, they're just still like, what does that mean? Okay, let me do it. But it doesn't feel as comfortable. So I think um, I know that I practice and get better and do my work and get things in my body. But when you can see someone else do it, it's like much more clear, like the value of this work. Like I don't notice myself getting my body organized, but I see it in my students. Um, and then I'll just end with one story from a student who she had about maybe 7 months of, maybe 6 months of private piano lessons when she was 5 with me. And then she did a whole year of Dalcroze plus 15-minute piano lessons. And then this year she's doing a Dalcroze class and piano lessons. And somehow we got on the topic of how her half notes were not quite long enough, and I wanted her to just practice moving the rhythm of her piece with her body. And so she got up from the piano and did that. And I was watching her, and she said, "Okay, cool, and now let's switch." So I moved and she watched me, and she just got really intrigued by the idea that she was being like her teacher. She was playing the piano, but her eyes were out there watching a mover and making sure she was with the mover. And she got so excited by this idea. And I was like, Maddie, this is kind of challenging. Like, you're really like trying to be with me and trying to match my music to the movement out there. And she's like, yeah. And then as soon as I said, this is kind of a challenging skill, she was like, can we do it on a piece I know better? Like Mary Had a Little Lamb. Like she could clearly tell, like, this is a cool, hard thing I want to get better at. And what I need right now is an easier piece that I'm more comfortable with playing. And so she like led the rest of that lesson, and she's going home to practice on her sister. She has a younger sister. So she's now going to make her younger sister like move for her while she practices the piano. And I'm sure she's going to come back next week and nail all those rhythms. Because the half notes are already in her body. And she's like, no problem, I can do a slide, march, 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 slide. Even though I don't think we worked on like that complicated of a rhythm last year, she's just like, yeah, I can do it. So anyways, I was just very excited. That was like an intrinsic motivation win. I felt so victorious after that lesson. I was like, I just got you like really hooked on this thing, and you're going to go and work really hard on it because you want to. So that's my story.
So nice. I think it's these kinds of stories where we're, especially now that we're at the beginning of a new year and we get to sort of, see in many cases, maybe we didn't see our students over the summer. That's certainly my case. It really is just like so personally as the teacher, I think it's so exciting to like be able to mark the progress that has been made because I think it's so incremental. We don't always pick up on it. Our plan for tonight is to talk a little bit about this, and then I have a little thing at the end, which I think you all will find interesting, but I'm not sure everybody will know exactly what to do with it. So before we get into all of that, I would love to hear if anybody else has thoughts about starting the new year or comparing students. I could talk about it as well, but I'm going to talk again here in a second. So I'd rather not make it about me. Are you back in your classrooms and are there students you've not seen and students that you get to sort of work with a second time? Is anybody sort of thinking how that goes, or are there any surprises? I have a couple stories I could tell, but I would be really happy to hear from others. Yeah, Alice, what sort of teaching are you doing now? Wait, you're muted. Alice is going to figure it out. Nope, can't hear you, Alice. You're still muted.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I've just barely begun at the Crowden School. And the thing that's different for me teaching there now, I'm teaching younger children, 3-year-olds, whereas before I'd only taught as young as 4. And I invited the parents to come. I said, I would really like the parents to be there with the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds. And the parents were very enthusiastic. And I think it would be wonderful because we are very short of Dalcroze teachers. It's a big problem, particularly in where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's no teacher training for Dalcroze. There are a few teachers, Eureka Richmond, Louise Malotta has retired completely. She teaches piano and wonderful person, and a few other people who are Dalcroze trained but don't actually get to apply their skills. But there is a great need for it. And just one other story came to mind when I was telling somebody about Dalcroze just yesterday. I had a girl in my class, in a public school class, who was a hemiplegic. She had a big brace on her leg, and so I wanted them to do skipping, and I paired her up with a child who was very kind and very gentle, so that she would be mindful of her partner. And they went skipping together, and this girl was just laughing with glee and moving around, and generally very, very happy child. But I heard that later they didn't, after I left the school, they did not have anyone doing music education through movement. And she got very quiet and basically deteriorated. And I think that, the teacher that I knew whose class she was in said that really had livened her up, basically, that experience of music and responding in movement despite her disability. And I think that it gives me a renewed feeling that we have to do more advocacy, because people don't know about this. And even though you'd think a lot of Dalcroze elements have filtered into music education, it's still thought of, and so many principals have said this to me, they basically want you just to teach them a bunch of songs. And you're basically a glorified camp counselor. They don't understand the value and importance of what we do. So I just hope that we can find a way to give a little bit more oomph to our work in spreading this kind of education, particularly for teachers. And I hope some parents will get interested in it. Many of them are musical. So
Yes,
that's
of
just a
course.
thought.
Thank you, Alice.
Get the parents. You're welcome.
Yeah, it's all, I mean, all of that. Any other little reflections or thoughts about how your years started, or what it was like to see your students again after some time away? Yeah, Leslie, I was hoping you'd chime in.
I just had a couple of questions. Like, I think I'm seeing some behavior that's sort of like post-traumatic stress disorder in some students. And like, one girl came in and she didn't like my hello song, and she would say she didn't want me to sing it, and she was literally throwing a fit. So the next week I had a parent come in, and she had to leave during the hello song. Then she came in and she was like the best kid in the class. But that's like behavior I've never seen. She's like 5. And I haven't seen kids act like that before. So I just wondered if anybody, I mean, it was real. I actually said to her, well, I'm going to sing it anyway. If you don't, you can hold your ears. I actually said that because I'm not going to change what I'm doing because somebody says, I don't like your song. I mean, that was like a full-blown tantrum. So I'm just wondering if anybody has seen, I mean, that was so weird. I've never seen anything like that.
Do you think
So
it maybe had something to do with COVID, or do you think maybe just...
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Post-traumatic stress disorder related to the fact that everything's been so weird.
Right.
I mean, they say a lot of us are still coming out of that.
Oh,
I
I
just
think.
wondered if I was saying things like that. And this was so dramatic. I mean, I was just like, oh my Lord, this is so complicated I couldn't deal with it. I had to have her leave
Yeah.
because she was stamping her feet and yelling. But once
Crazy.
she came in after the song, she was fine.
Huh.
So, but that's so strange. So I didn't know if anybody else had seen anything like this, because I feel like there's weird stuff going on
Well,
that I had, like kids not separating and things I
yeah.
haven't seen before. I don't
Well,
know.
I think, I mean, there are lots of anecdotes. I bet at all ages, definitely at the university and in the high school, there are stories, that we've been sharing with our colleagues about, the students were, especially we're thinking of these older students, they went through a period of 2 or 3 years without being able to go through their sort of normal social growth, where they were,
Right.
with each other, testing out how you make friends, testing the limits of their teachers, testing of just what it means to sort of grow. And then like at the university, we were, getting first year students who were doing weird, like 15-year-old business, even though they're 18-year-old students. But like we saw like
Okay.
examples of behavior that were like, oh, wait a second, we haven't seen that before. That's supposed to be worked out in high school. Like you're supposed to make that mistake 3 years ago. And then the high school teachers beat that out of you. And by the time we see you, you've already tested all that stuff out and now you're ready. But there were a number of things that were going on, especially last year, and let's instill a little bit of here that we really felt like, oh, they were just like developmental milestones that were missed because everybody was so isolated and didn't get a chance. So I mean, I think that's one
So
set of things that I've seen. Anybody else either to that
that
or
makes,
to,
that makes me feel a little better because she probably missed some milestone
yeah,
and somehow really missed the mark at a certain point and just decided. And her parents say she loves me and she loves the class, but she was doing this, you know.
so
So
who
in some
knows?
ways, I mean, that's not like talking about teaching in the same way that like Veronica is about seeing growth, but it's about seeing deficit, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, there's some of
what's
that
going
too,
on?
right?
That's
I'm sure
part of
there's
it.
Yeah,
always some of that.
yeah.
Well, I had a fun story, and actually this kind of thing has happened I may almost a lot actually over the years, but I always forget about it. It always surprises me every time I teach. I teach required eurythmics classes to all the performance majors at our university. And they don't have any choice, and they have to come. And we usually, I mean, we on the whole we have a grand time, and I think I do a good job, and I think that the basically every student, I really feel that by the time we're done, I've convinced them that there was a lot of worth in what we were doing, even though the methods are really unorthodox compared to all the other kinds of courses they take at the university. And so there's always this kind of like there's always a couple students who are like, where has this been my whole life? I've been waiting for a chance to move around and just participate in these ways. It's the best thing ever. I don't even care what's coming next. I'm just showing up. Like, so there's always a couple of those. And then there's also often a handful of students, especially in the opening weeks, who are really quite skeptical. They're like, I don't know what's going on, and you're weird, and this is weird, and I get like side eyes, and I do a good job of it, and so nobody certainly battles me. I don't have anybody battling. I don't have anybody crying. I don't have anybody stomping out of the room. But I'm really sensitive to like who are the people in this room that are skeptical, and then I work just so hard to try to find every possible way to help them understand. Like, I mean, the methods are not things you've done before, but actually this is all relevant. This isn't just like weird stuff. And I'm not just some guy that likes to take his shoes off. Like, seriously, we would only do this because it's going to help your musicianship. And so, I mean, and I get a lot of time with these students. And so we have lots of time to go slow and to work things out. But even to the end, there's still like a kind of a ranking of the students who are just like, yay. And the students who are like, we'll see you, Dr. Neely, but you could just always wonder, do they really? So, and after the required courses, I teach an elective in Dalcroze pedagogy every fall. And almost every year, somebody signs up for that class that I think, oh my gosh, that person signed up for this class. That person who was giving me a side eye the whole year, like there was no way, like that person signed up for my class. And it happens every year. And again, this year I have the same thing where I just think I would have never, ever guessed that you thought this was valuable enough that you now want more, like not required, and then you're going to show up. So I only tell the story just to say, like, I have to keep reminding myself, I really, as much as I think I really know what's going on, I don't know all of it. I don't know how people are processing everything. And so, there has to be just trust in the process that if we just continue to sort of bring the goods, the students are picking things up, even the things that we don't know. And so Leslie's student who's throwing the tantrum, like she's still paying attention, even in the middle of her tantrum, is what I believe.
Yeah,
And
she came back in and was totally calm. But you're
yeah,
reminding me of when I used to teach for pre-college. Sometimes kids look like nothing in the class, and they were so excited, and their movement was terrible, and what it was doing for them was so much, and you can't always get in there and tell what that is.
yeah.
You know,
So you just have to trust that, we talk in the pedagogy class, we talk about trusting the process, like just trusting that if we go through these routines, that it's going to hit students in the ways that it needs to, and they're going to be able to grab what they're ready to grab, as opposed to sort of forcing people to memorize vocabulary words or something, which ignores the student and just tells you like, this is the thing. But in these processes, we're really just sort of opening doors. We're just like inviting them into an experience, but their own personal engagement with that experience is up to them, and what they're ready for. Like, we can't force them to be ready for a thing at a certain moment in time. We can just sort of provide the opportunity. It's a really special way of being. Well, I mean, we still have 30 minutes. We have a lot of time tonight. And I'm loving the idea of talking about new students or returning students. So before we pivot, any other thoughts about all those sorts of ideas?
I have a nice story to share that's a little bit along Veronica's lines. And we had been sharing about some of this stuff in our meetings and such between the three of us. But like for me, I also have the opportunity to teach like real littles with their parents, which of course I'm giving an experience to the family unit. And my job is really to figure out how to get music into their house and to get the parent to do the thing. The parent showing up thinking, oh, I'm here for my kids' class. But they're really there. I'm really trying to teach them through their kids. And trying to find ways to really invite them and feel comfortable. And I always have some really wild thing happen. And so my favorite one this past week was, and it wasn't that bad, but like really enthusiastic class, a little over registered. Usually there's 10 families, there's 12. And this kid, two kids in the family, they missed last week. It's a 1.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. And they come in and they had just been at a wedding, and this kiddo was thrilled because the drummer of the band had given him a set of drumsticks. So he came in dragging his drumsticks because they're so long they're dragging on the floor, and then proceeded to like, of course him and his sister are the most active out of the whole group, and with a bunch of kids who are much younger than him and a couple of parents who are brand new and pretty still COVID bubbly. Like this child is running across the room with his sticks, and I'm like, oh, so excited. And so you don't want to squash out this like joy, and then you want to give this opportunity for this child to maybe be a leader, and then to also teach this parent what your expectations about sticks are without stopping the whole room as they're kind of coming in and being like, excuse me, let me tell you the rules, which will shut down every parent from here to, Nantucket or whatnot. So I had to like rearrange my whole lesson plan. And I, of course, am baby wearing right now, so my 6-month-old is with me at all times. So I'm like trying to figure out how to have 7 arms and teach this class and be like a calm and thoughtful teacher. So our stick song became our first song that we did instead of our 5th song that we did in the classroom. So we did like a very quick hello, and all of a sudden I was like, and now we're all going to play sticks. And this kid got to show his sticks, and then everyone got to show how they were drumming. And of course, we all learned that we have to sit for sticks, and we don't stand up with our sticks because we don't want sticks to end up anywhere they're not supposed to be, and all the families giggle and stuff. And so I was kind of able to help this mom figure out what my expectations were, being super clear, but like we were having so much fun with our sticks. So that was a successful moment, but that does not always happen that way. I should say very clearly. It doesn't always go that way, but I got lucky and I was able to rearrange this lesson plan. But I always think about you, Stephen, a little bit of like how clear you are about how you're going to connect with your kids and you're going to connect with your audience no matter what. And I think that even up until a couple years ago, I get so worried that I wasn't teaching everybody the song or the thing that I was supposed to teach them that I would forget occasionally. But the whole deal was like, if you can connect with these families or connect with these students, then you're in. Then you can teach them whatever you need to teach them. But without connecting to them, the rest of all that beautiful training and all the harmonies I've worked out and all the lovely ways I want to teach the song or teach the musical concept is totally
Right.
like unimportant in a certain sense. And so one of the things that I saw one of my colleagues do, but then also inspired by you, Stephen, was that every class now I have a minute where I check in with every family, and parents are real nervous right now, like they haven't learned how to make friends in a long time, so it's not just the kids. So I tell them what they're going to tell me. So like, tell me your kid's name and one favorite park that you have in the area. And then they all go around the room and do this, and I joyfully now give up probably 7-8 minutes of my class time, which is a lot, to have all these parents share a little snippet, and boy does it make all the difference. And then on the other end of things where we're all pretending that we're not business people, but we have to think about are the kids re-enrolling, are we getting good write-ups on our college whatevers, like then these parents are so excited that they get to come back to class. And even if they're not going to become besties with the person sitting next to them, they do know that that's Calvin and that his favorite park is the one down the street. And oh, yeah, they're going to go and try that park out now, too. So there's my long stream of thought. But
No, that's all good. And just to sort of finish with that idea of the connecting or taking the time, in my pedagogy class earlier today, actually, these are brand new students. And when we do Dalcroze pedagogy during the fall, as opposed to what we do in the summer with our teacher training, Dalcroze pedagogy in the fall is more like a survey of pedagogical ideas rather than straight up like helping these people get their certification. So these are undergrads, a lot of them are music ed students who are who are just really curious about what's been going on in the classes that they were required to take, where we don't talk about pedagogy at all. We're only talking about musicianship, and we use Dalcroze methodologies in a very proper eurythmics setting to help them just be better musicians, but we're not teaching them how to teach it in any way. So then they enroll in the pedagogy class so we can talk about what are some of the choices that are going on and what am I doing and how did I make that choice and what was in the back of my mind while I was doing the thing. And just today we talked, one of the topics was about just setting routines and how critical that is to any successful classroom, not only Dalcroze classrooms, but really any. And so part of what you're doing is letting those families meet each other and share a little bit and make it personal and make sure that they have a buy-in. And then part of what you're doing is setting up this sort of routine where they kind of know that they're walking into safety and they know kind of what to expect, and they kind of, everybody starts to, as we build these routines into our classrooms, whatever the routine of your class is, if there's some way for the student to be able to predict at least some of what's about to happen, it settles things down, adults and kids. It's as significant for my college students or for adults as I ever thought that it was with the little ones. Just having some kind of cycle where we can sort of predict a little bit of what's going on, which then permits the teacher to then open it up and get into the new things of the day, because we sort of welcomed everybody into something safe. So I think that there's more than one advantage in that. Emma, there was a comment in the chat about is there a stick song that can be shared?
I just wrote back. It was
Oh, okay.
non-syllable, like it was like a song without words. And this one happens to be an Irish one, like Irish mouth music situation. And Alice, I can share some YouTube stuff of similar varieties. And so in that case, we're working on language development with the kids and also then telling the parents that all sorts of silly syllables are available for them to use, and boy do they love coming up with their own, and it gets everybody singing, and it's also just a great step at their milestone.
Sounds like fun. Please
That-
do share. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that sounds outstanding. All right, well, that was all just grand. Before I get into my last little bit, I want to remind everybody who's here and anybody who's watching the recording after the fact that the virtual Dalcroze meetup, which is the whole point and really was the what we started doing, is really just intended to be a sharing session. And so, you can, when I'm describing to colleagues who don't know what this is all about or what I've been up to, I say, oh yeah, we have this international study group. So it's just a way for us to share what we've been up to, what you're getting geeky about, what your research has been, or what are all versions of the same thing of what have you been doing. And so if everybody who's here and anybody who's watching, it's really quite a good practice to sort of say, oh yeah, well, what am I doing? And if I was given 5 minutes, what could I sort of share? And then we would love it if you would reach out and give us, and say, oh, I think I maybe have 5 minutes of something I could share. We would love to feature you and be upfront and then be able to talk about what your research makes us think about. So one of the things that I've been doing recently, my main gig is to work with the university students, and I'm teaching musicianship for musicians through Dalcroze methods. That's the main way I spend all day every day. But as a university professor, I also do research, and one of the main areas of my research is under this heading of design, sort of like professional design spaces and design education, and within the big world of design, there's actually all sorts of like subgroups, little camps of different kinds of design. So if you don't know the word design well, or don't know about those people, the joke for a while has been, well, the old designers, they were either posters or toasters. And so they were two-dimensional graphic design or communication design or information design work where they work in 2 dimensions. And so there's making posters or marketing materials, laying out books, or, any of those sorts of things. So anything 2 dimensions. And then, or they're making toasters, 3-dimensional design, product design, industrial design, the shape of things, the shape of your mug, the shape and the way you use your coffee maker or your toaster, or your, in the older days, it was like your vacuum cleaner and the shape of your car and all of that. Now it's everything around you. Like basically everything probably that you can see right now, every one of them was designed by somebody. And you have to really get lost in the woods before you drop out of the Anthropocene and actually get into organic, real, natural world again. Like otherwise, everything has been designed. And it's gotten to such an extent in the world of design that instead of just designing posters and toasters, over the last, say, 20 years, they've understood that they are designing engagement, or the way that we interact with those things. So it's not just that, oh, here's a toaster, but actually if I design the lever on the toaster like this, I can actually encourage the user to reach out and engage with it in a very specific way. I can make buttons or levers, I can make things light, I can make things buzz. All of that stuff is called interaction design. And then there's a sort of a special version of interaction design. It's called service design, which are all of these are now much of the modern versions of design are all design of experience. And the way I got into it and the way it started to make me kind of excited, like I wanted to get geeky about this, is that I thought, well, wait, design of experience, isn't that what like composers and performers do all the time? Like I'm a conductor, don't I design experiences for my audiences? Like I get to decide when I'm going to speed up or slow down or double a thing or make something louder, and I'm a staging director, and so I'm going to decide to put like spotlights on this and push that into the dark, and I've worked with the opera companies for years and years and years, and the way that we sort of craft these stories and bring them to a crowd, isn't that experience design? And it is. But the big difference between experience design for the stage, which is just called choreography, artistic director, conductors, performers, like all of that, the difference between the one for the stage and the one that is under this heading of experience design and interaction design is that when it's for the stage, it's a curated audience in a extremely artificial curated space. Like we've all agreed in advance, we're going to come in and sit in the dark, and we're all going to look one direction, and we all have made a pact that we're not going to talk out of turn, and they're going to like put spotlights on the thing I'm supposed to look at, and I'm not supposed to do anything else. And so we all agree. And then if we all agree to that, there's actually a really good chance we'll get to witness magic. But boy, there's a lot of things that have to align if the magic's going to happen. And what experience designers are interested in is mundane experience. All the not fine art times of your day where you just have to like be involved in a thing. So your healthcare system, and the way you ride a bus, and the way you order a latte, and the way you do your commute to work is a version of urban design. And people are like thinking about how could they make that commute better, more sustainable, less annoying, more efficient. Like any of these things now, there are professionals who are working on trying to like fix it, or try to like be thoughtful about how you put it together. So one way of thinking about what is service design, the design of service, like your healthcare and your relationship with your healthcare company, or the way you order a latte at Starbucks, is like a smaller version of the same thing. A way of thinking about it would be to say, if you were the service designer, how could you make the experience more musical? Or maybe you want to go a little broader, like theater, and say more artful, more of a rich experience. And so if we use the analogy or the metaphor of music for, say, ordering a latte at Starbucks, then you can say, okay, well, if we compare that to like a piece, like I'm going to park and then I'm going to come in, and then I'm going to get in a queue, and then I'm going to say some words, and then I'm going to wait, and then they're going to hand me a thing, and I pay in there somewhere, and they hand me a thing. What if we considered that instead of just like a dry list of events, if we actually worded it more like, oh, no, there are gestures at play. They have arcs of intention. As Dalcrozians, maybe you know the terminology anacrusis, crucis, and metacrucis. So what's the anacrusic gesture that I'm working through as I'm finding my way toward the cashier? And what's the metacrucis of after paying? And what happens in the space between paying and waiting for my latte to be made? Is that dead space? Is the piece over? Is there like actual like stillness and nothing's happening? Or could someone design that in a way where I would feel like I was still part of an unfolding experience, and like I'm a performer on the stage? And so my a lot of my current research is about trying to answer these questions and talk with most recently with service designers about how do you think about what it is that you're doing, the service that you're designing, and is it possible that a musician, conductor, Dalcrozian could help shed some light on the things that you're working on? So we, in service design, they fall into, currently, they're very much in a very similar trap to what Jacques Dalcroze, one of the traps Jacques Dalcroze recognized in his students, which is this difference between hitting the note and actually creating the gesture, or playing the fullness of the note, or having an awareness of the motion of the phrase. And so one of the things that the 18-year-olds who come to study with me, not all of them, but a number of them in their sort of first semester freshman work, we're just trying to get them to realize the difference between hitting, like poking little notes and trying to claim they understand the rhythm, and actually trying to play through the length of these notes and trying to be aware that they're not just like little pokes, but they're full gestures. So I'll give you an example of that, and then we'll try to compare it to service design. We say, like, for all of you who've maybe not been in a Dalcroze classroom before, we like, one of the things we do is we clap, right? And of course, the Dalcroze clap is not just to hit and hold that note as though nothing's going, but the classic Dalcroze clap always has these sort of, you know, expansive gestures about them. And built into that, of course, is the moment where my fingers touch, the crucis of the gesture. But of course, there's the push through, which is the anacrusis. Then there's this instant where they touch, and then there's this follow through. And if you think about the time involved in just the clap, let alone any note or any phrase, the time that my hands actually touch isn't measurable. It's just a flash in the middle of a very measurable preparation and a very measurable follow through, the anacrusis and metacrusis. But the actual touch of the crucis is over as quickly as it happens. And so students who have somehow in their prior training, they find their way to the performance major in the university and are still in a mindset that all they're supposed to do is a bunch of hits rather than be aware of the gesture that precedes and follows through. Their musicianship as a sort of skill set is lacking at that point, because that hasn't been awakened in them to realize, oh, wait, I have more to do here. So of course, all of our routines in those early eurythmics classes are about trying to get the student to be aware of the gesture of the thing that they are doing. And then we'll build that one step further to say, oh, let's read this particular rhythm. Now let's read this next rhythm. Let's read a third rhythm. And now what's the difference between them? And I think a lot of the students who come with this kind of poking attitude, they just think, well, this one hits on 2 and that one hits on 3 and this one hits on 1 and the and of 1, you know, and they just think it's that. And we say, no, actually, the reason a composer would compose with this given rhythm motive over another is because they have a built-in inertia or momentum that is unique to this arrangement of notes. And so what we're looking for is not how you can hit notes in a row, but how you can reveal the momentum of a given motive. And so every slightly different arrangement of longs and shorts will elicit some different gesture in the experiencing body. And as the performer, we're trying to sort of tune into that. So this idea of the difference between sort of poking or hitting or instant and thinking that the crucis itself is the whole point is really I think, quite shallow. And so many of our routines as Dalcrozians is like, yes, there's a crucis, but you realize there's a whole lot of stuff happening before and after. And actually, that's where your artistry can really sort of flex, because you're like in motion. And so you can push ahead or pull back, or, that's where you get to sort of make choices. Compare this to a service design blueprint, they call them service design. They get journey maps, and they've got all these like weird tools where they're trying to like chart out what it is that people do in any given kind of designed experience out in the normal world. And the way that they have, over the last 20 years, have come to chart it out is with a whole bunch of cruces. They don't know the word, but it's just a bunch, they call them touch points. But what they are is just the instant of contact, but no awareness in their tools of how you drive toward the instant or how you come away from the instant. And so they're really good at coming up with logical arrangements of, in our wording, of notes. Like, oh, it makes sense that this note would follow that note, would follow that note, would follow that note. But they have no sense for the actual lived experience of the service, because it's not even built into their tools. So a lot of what I'm spending time doing is trying to find language and examples without being able to tempt them into an actual Eurythmics class, although I've been able to do some of that as well. But mostly I don't get to do that. Mostly I just have to write about it. Try to tempt these designers into recognizing that what they're really after is not only is not only just a logical order of events, but actually to start to recognize how some of the things they're calling an event overlap with others. Some of them are nested inside of others as sub-phrases under larger phrases. And that in all the cases, our goal is to create eurythmic work that is good flow from one moment to the next. So rather than I pay and now the piece stops and I'm just stuck waiting and feeling stuck, what would be really lovely if there would be some way that you could keep the piece going, keep the gesture, keep the line, keep the music of my participation in this chamber piece of trying to buy a latte. If you could just keep the chamber piece moving forward so that I would have an idea of what was coming, and I would recognize that there's a cadence, and I would actually get the reward of the cadence rather than starting and stopping the piece over and over and over, which is of course quite frustrating. And so I do my best here in just 2 minutes to try to give you a sense of, to think about it, because I invite you, you don't have to be thinking about service design exactly, but I invite you to think about your outside of classroom life or your off the stage life, and realize that our training as Dalcrozians is absolutely relevant to all the other parts of your day, where you can sort of realize like, yeah, well, what just happened? If I ask you, what did you do earlier today, you'll probably give me a service design journey map of touch points. I did this, then I did that, then I did this, then I did that. The cruces is the thing that we're sort of tempted to list. I do the same. We're tempted to sort of describe our day through the cruces, just those like flashes of instants. But actually, the name of the instant is not the same thing as the experience of the phrase or the experience of the gesture of the note. And so if you can start to play back your day and realize which gestures took like a huge amount of time and which ones really were quite quick, and which ones were sub gestures of larger motions, which ones were, in service of, I'm trying to get to this other place. And you can start to sort of unlock the musicality of your day. And when the piece died, when the piece got stuck, when you actually were the artist and you're like, oh, no, I guided that. Like I had something to do with how that moment unfolded. And then we realize we have quite a lot of the wording they use is agency. We have quite a lot of agency over our day. The times when I have felt most frustrated in anything, but we'll just say as a teacher, have been the exact same times where I feel like I have no control. I have no agency. I'm just a jerk that's being made to play a bunch of notes in somebody else's ordered row, as opposed to feeling like an artist who is creative and has some sort of ability to adjust or to evolve or to encourage or to nudge or to pull or to reveal. Like when I'm in those spaces, it's the most exciting day ever. And I think that our colleagues who burn out, that terminology, I think burnout is something we're all capable of, and it has everything to do with having lost the agency, having lost the ability to sort of stake out my path a bit and adjust, like the artist who's just trying to play their notes, but realizes that it's not a bunch of dots I have to hit in an order that some composer made me hit, but rather each one is an opening for a lean in and a lean away, that I actually get to control how I lean into the cruces and how I pull away from the cruces. And I can sort of, adjust and mess with those. So that's what I've been getting geeky about lately. We have 5 minutes. You want to talk about anything?
Well, we were talking about agency, and like in my Dalcroze life, like part of that has to do with where you work, right? And
Sure.
like if you have really disorganized admin, like you lose agency.
Yeah.
And like I have crafted everything, so I got to places where usually that's not happening. And then you have the freedom to actually express yourself in class when you don't have all these crazy things going on,
Yeah.
and so like people don't realize that that's part of the social dance of life is being disorganized, right? And they don't realize how that plays out into the whole thing around them.
Yeah.
But I've worked
Well,
really hard to get places where it isn't like that so that I can actually be artistic.
so I mean, that really is just another example of service design, truly. So
Right.
the difference between a principal who understands that if they interrupt the day 40 times a day with announcements, and can Johnny please come to the main office and yada yada, like interrupt, and then at the same time appear to be frustrated that we're not, that our classes are somehow not just beautifully flowing. Like it's
Right.
it's a problem in the design of what's going on. And so,
Right. Yeah.
so recognizing that, like, there is a musicality to our day that we aspire to. There's a kind of beauty and a pacing and a good flow that we aspire to in our day. And I think it is, to me, it's absolutely as much music when it's working, or bad music when it's not, as as some given little song that we might teach or that we might work with. And so,
Yeah.
the metaphor, I think, to me, really truly, it's more than a metaphor. Like, I mean, I really see it as a kind of musicality.
Yeah, because I knew lumberjacks in Vermont, and they said the ones that didn't know what they were doing were yelling all the time, and the ones that really knew it was like a dance, right? And it was
Yeah.
very quiet, I mean, so that was an interesting thing to think about. They were just in the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's just a metaphor. I
Yeah.
really think it's the stuff. Go ahead, Veronica.
Um, and you just reminded me of a time right after grad school when I had to schedule some lessons and meetings, and someone asked me when I'm free. And I would literally spend 15 minutes for every person going through my calendar and listing every possible time that I could meet with them. And like, there came a point when I was like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to be so accommodating. And I can choose, like, I prefer to have a meeting on one of these 3 times, not like 17 options. Like, and I don't know, it reminded me of what you're saying about making choices about our day and what is going to flow well and not
Yeah, I started crafting.
because like you're switching from this to this, like switching between admin work and creative work for me is like a transition. So to be able to say, here are all the meetings and I got my emails done and now I need to focus on my lessons. Um, I think that was a big, like, that's a big choice that I make very regularly
Yeah.
about how to get my brain to do the things that it
Yeah.
needs to do.
And so you can, I can word that to myself as I'm being efficient and whatever. I can also word that to myself again under this metaphor of musicality. And it was just like, we're not up to that part of the piece yet. Like, that's a different cadence, it's a different gait, it's a different kind of motion, it's a different, a different character. And
Well, and today I mentioned to some people before the call started that I was like playing at two religious services and there was a half-hour break in between, but like I had a potential prospective new student phone call, right? And so I like squeezed them in, but it just was so hard to just be like, oh, let me talk to you about my studio, but like I have to go, like gotta do this other thing. And I don't like doing that, but like the day was packed, so I did it. But yeah, that's what you said. It's not a great flow.
I mean, I don't have a day where I have nothing going on, and I'll tell somebody I only have 15 minutes somewhere. I can talk between
Nice.
12 and 12:15, and then they think you're busy all day and I'm off, but they don't know.
That's good.
That's exactly right.
Well, friends, here we've done it. We've come to the end again where it is on the hour. And it is so good to have had this little bit of time with everyone. I hope that you will come back. Veronica, do you or Emma, do you know off the top of your head what our next is what's the next thing? I mean, not Jill, Dawn's class is we've only missed one. So if you haven't made it to, I mean, she's only had one so far. If you haven't made it and would like to come and get your moving on and just work with just a wonderful person with so much really great experience, please sign up with Dawn.
Our next event, aside from Dawn, is Tuesday, October 11th or Wednesday, October 12th meetup. We have Lara coming again. She's from France. She's going to come and present for 5 minutes, but would love to have more presenters. So maybe it's one of you.
Yeah. The Emma, we haven't we just want to make sure that everybody knows Emma Shubin is the actually, what is your title of Integral Steps? Is it?
I'm the executive director.
There you are. I knew there was a good fancy term.
Veronica is, what have we settled on? The development director, but also the director of the New England chapter of Integral
Right.
Steps.
So the virtual Dalcroze meetup is so fortunate to pair with Integral Steps for just all kinds of support and just really professional collaborations. We're so pleased. We also are affiliated somewhat with the Carnegie Mellon Marta Sanchez Dalcroze Training Center, but mostly just that the CMU is really kind in hosting our website. And so that's the team. That's what we've been doing. If you all can think what you've been getting geeky about, we would love to hear about it, and we'd love to feature you and give you a couple minutes. So please send us an email and let us know what you're up to. And otherwise, please join us at the upcoming master classes and the upcoming meetups. We have a nice, actually, we're already forecasting into the spring as far as things that are coming up. So lots of good stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.